At night, the Korean peninsula reveals a stark divide. To the south, a vibrant grid of light marks one of the world's most connected economies. To the north, a wall of absolute darkness. This blackout is the visible footprint of a system engineered for one specific purpose: regime survival. The foundations of this system were laid during the Japanese occupation from 1910 to 1945. It was a period of brutal military rule that attempted to wipe out Korea's language and culture while heavily industrializing the North's mineral-rich mountains. Following Japan's defeat in 1945, the peninsula was split along the 38th parallel to establish separate Soviet and American occupation zones. The ensuing Korean War caused immense physical destruction. Massive U.S. bombing campaigns leveled northern infrastructure, reducing cities like Pyongyang to rubble. By the time the fighting ended in 1953, the North had lost roughly 10% of its population. The Kim regime used this trauma to justify a xenophobic quarantine, framing absolute isolation as a defensive necessity against a hostile world. Kim Il-sung, a former anti-Japanese guerrilla leader, consolidated power after the war by rebuilding the nation under his singular command. He introduced the ideology of juche, or self-reliance, positioning it as a radical response to Korea's history of foreign intervention. Kim eliminated political rivals through ruthless purges, establishing himself as an infallible patriarch above the law. To secure a permanent legacy, the state created the myth of the Mount Paktu bloodline, the claim that only Kim's direct descendants possess the revolutionary purity to lead the nation. This shift transformed the state into a dynastic cult, where all social and political life centers on the survival of one family. Control is maintained through a hidden caste system called sangbun. It stratifies the entire population based on their family's political loyalty, tracking history back 3 generations. At the top is the core class, followed by the wavering middle and the hostile base. Core members earn residence in elite Pyongyang, while hostile citizens are funneled into remote mining districts. Rations are prioritized for high-status families, leaving hostile areas facing severe shortages. By linking privilege to loyalty, the regime ensures the most capable classes have a vested interest in the status quo, while the lowest classes lack the resources to organize. Citizens are kept in a state of information quarantine. Global internet access is non-existent, replaced by a monitored domestic internet and radios with tuning knobs sealed by security services. This secrecy often leads to unverified sensationalist reporting in the West, which can mask the actual mechanisms of state control. However, verified reports from the UN and human rights groups identify a system of atrocities far more calculated than tabloid rumors suggest. The Kwanliso political prison network holds hundreds of thousands of people in unmapped zones of forced labor and deliberate starvation. Imprisonment follows the rule of yanjuaje, or guilt by association. When one person is accused of a political crime, their parents, siblings, and children are often incarcerated alongside them. The state maintains obedience by holding every citizen's entire family hostage against the threat of dissent. External security is managed through Sungun, a military-first policy that prioritizes defense spending even at the cost of civilian survival. Kim Jong-un has pursued the Byongjin line, attempting to grow the civilian economy while simultaneously expanding the nation's nuclear arsenal. From the regime's perspective, these weapons are the ultimate guarantee of survival, serving as a deterrent against any attempt at forced regime change. This arsenal is a calculated shield designed to make the Kim dynasty untouchable. Even this rigid control has limits. In the 1990s, the collapse of state support led to a famine known as the Arduous March, which killed up to 1 million people. When state rations failed, citizens turned to jangmadang, or black markets, to trade clothes and smuggled goods for food. These markets birthed a new merchant class that operates largely outside the state's formal hierarchy, trading in currency and information that the regime does not control. The failure of the state rationing system introduced survival mechanisms that depend on private trade rather than government loyalty. For most defectors, the decision to flee is a response to desperate hunger and systemic persecution, rather than political ideology. The primary escape route involves crossing the Yalu or Tumen rivers into China, a journey made under constant threat from border guards and freezing conditions.
China considers these defectors illegal migrants and frequently repatriates them, prioritizing its diplomatic relationship with Pyongyang over international refugee status. Those caught and returned face torture, forced labor in the Quenliso, or execution. For millions, the choice is between slow starvation at home or the risk of absolute ruin across the border. The state now faces a generation that grew up on black markets and smuggled foreign media, creating perspectives that exist outside of government control. Kim Jong-un has responded by modernizing digital surveillance and intensifying crackdowns on the border to re-establish total authority. The isolation of North Korea is the outcome of a logical system of self-preservation. The tragedy of this architecture is that the survival of a single dynasty has required the permanent, systemic imprisonment of 25 million people.